Hey everyone, so in today's video, as the title suggests, is I want to take a revisit and talk a little bit again about my time in the engineering industry. Now, I want to start by saying in this video is that engineering is a very respectable profession. It has a special place in my heart. We need engineers in this world, but obviously if you know my background story, is that I left the industry several years ago, in fact. So obviously there are several problems that I found inside of this industry, and that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. So let's just get right to it. But as always, like, comment, subscribe. Honestly, if you guys want to, you can also watch the end and decide. And with that said, let's get started. So the first problem that I think really exists in the engineering industry, and also again, I'm going to leave timestamps on the bottom so you can skip around, but I do recommend watching every minute because I'm going to go into it in detail. But the first problem that I really found about this industry is pretty much everything related to the industry culture. And I think that this is one of the biggest things and one of the biggest reasons that I've seen a lot of people make their exit and leave the industry. Long story short is that the problem with this industry I found is that it is really workaholic. And I can certainly say one thing is that I've worked in a lot of different industries before during my lifetime. I've dabbled in education. I currently work in the TV, film, and entertainment industry. I've done stuff in the events industry, the music industry, obviously the engineering industry, the construction industry. And in all of my time, while it is true that there are also a lot of other professions that are relatively workaholic, there is a particular, in my personal observation, what's the best way to phrase this? A particular number of people or personality types that I have found inside of the industry culture where workaholism is just really promoted. And while I do admit is that it's important to make sacrifices obviously in your career, it comes to a point that it's really important to ask which sacrifices are actually worth it. I have seen people in the engineering industry that walked away from clubs, that walked away from hobbies, that walked away from a certain lifestyle just to become study machines inside of the industry. They basically became a machine from the very first day they walked into engineering school, just to study all day, to do like the absolute best they can in school, which is not wrong per se, but what is maybe questionable is when it comes at a lot of sacrifices that may or may not necessarily be worth it. Because at the end of the day, I tell a lot of people, even if you actually like engineering as a profession, which I did, I liked it at least certainly as a craft, sometimes the lifestyle and the industry culture can really make a lot of people question whether or not it's truly worth it at the very end of the day. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I think really made an impact, to me at least, about it. When I was deciding whether or not I wanted to stay in the engineering industry, a lot of times I had to list out the pros and cons, I had to list out the sacrifices, and I realized that because of the work-life balance and the workaholism that exists inside of this industry, not only does it lead to so much burnout sometimes, but the other problem is that because of the nature of this, I was making so many sacrifices to be there. I was not spending as much time with my hobbies. I had always wanted to travel, my social life, my social circle. I'm going to talk a little bit about the social side in a little bit. So definitely stay tuned. But the social life, the social circle, or the lack of a lot of this stuff, it was basically choosing between my engineering career or everything else. Travel, social life, hobbies, side hustles, business, growth, time for myself, time for personal life, time for other things, time for family, all of that stuff. It was this or that. And so obviously I made a decision. But a lot of people to this day, and especially people that do not even like their profession, because there's engineers I know that do not like engineering, but really became an engineer because of either the money or because they just didn't know what else to do and they were good at math and science. But for people that did like the profession, you can only imagine if the people that like the profession still struggled with burnout and all this stuff. You can only imagine what it would have been like for people that do not like the profession. And I think this is one of the biggest things that people really have to understand about the job that they're potentially going to walk into. Which probably goes on to the next problem that I really faced in this industry, that I found is a really big problem about the industry, is really everything related to the social scene and the social atmosphere. Now, this one you definitely have to hear out, because I think whenever I talk about this, a lot of people are going to automatically assume it means that I think the people are evil, the people are sinister, or anything like that, which is very far from the truth. there are a lot of very, very friendly people in the engineering community. You might occasionally work with some very hard souls. You might even maybe work a lot with very hard to work souls. But as a collective, I like to think, at least for myself, that most engineers at the heart are very, very friendly people. They're friendly, or at least they're certainly just people at the end of the day. But the problem is with the engineering industry is that what I really mean when I say social reasons and social atmosphere is that just objectively speaking, there is almost no diversity in this industry. Objectively, no one can argue there are not many females. I specifically worked in civil engineering in the construction industry, and I believe it's about 90% male, or certainly very, very much around there. I've heard it's a little bit better if you go in the gender ratio is a little bit better if you go into chemical and maybe software engineering as well. But I don't work in chemical or software, so if you are a chemical or software engineer, maybe comment that down below what the gender ratio is like in your particular field of engineering. But as someone that's in civil, that was in the construction industry, the gender ratio was very, very extremely skewed towards male. There is not a lot of gender diversity. I would even go to argue most companies, especially if you're in a very big conservative construction firm, there is not a lot of racial diversity. There is not a lot of LGBT diversity. There is not a lot of diversity in every category of the word diversity, And I think that's the big thing. And a little bit more subjective, but I would even go to argue is that there's also not even a lot of diversity, even in terms of personality diversity. And that's a really, really big one. This industry, I got the sense that a lot of the people in this industry are just, again, they're really nice people, but they're really, really similar to each other. It's dominantly introverted, nothing wrong with that. Again, it's dominantly like people are very workaholic. It has that kind of culture where everyone's just kind of working and hustling, but to very, very extreme ends that makes people, again, questionable whether or not it's worth it in their career path. But the idea really is that even if you actually fit in this demographic, one of the things that I've personally experienced growing up in New York City, which is where I'm from, where we live in a melting pot full of diversity, is that diversity really helps people bring perspective to different things. When you have a lot of diversity, you're able to invite more people into the community. People are more likely to feel welcomed. You're more likely to get different ideas. So even if you actually fit the description of an engineer or a stereotypical engineer that I just commented about, at the end of the day, if you don't have a lot of diversity, it can make it very, very difficult for certain types of people to be able to fit in. And at the end of the day, even if you do actually fit in, it can make it very difficult because you kind of are now shielded from a lot of the big ideas that other kinds of people can potentially bring. The other kinds of ideas, perspectives, viewpoints that can really, really bring to the table, you now lose. And the even worser part about this is, and the other big problem is that, and I've mentioned this in a lot of my corporate engineering videos as well, or just corporate videos as well, is that in many, many cases, you are more likely to be promoted from a job, especially if you are working a job that is not easy to quantify performance. Because some jobs like sales, right? You can see who sold more product, marketing, who outreached to more, people, right? These are kind of like jobs that you can quantify who's the best. Sports, athletes, right? Who ran faster, who scored the most points. But then you have a lot of more like meticulous administrative like jobs where you will have like 100 people try to work on a project and produce almost the same code, the same results, the same numbers, the same graphs, the same, picture, the same design, all that stuff. Once you go beyond a certain point, most of your promotion is going to be based off of favoritism. So if you are someone that's struggling to fit, if you are struggling to fit the culture, that's going to be really, really difficult to build up your career. And that's one of probably the second big things to really mention when it comes to just, I guess you can say, a problem that I really, really found deeply with the engineering industry, which is really related to the social scene and the community, that I think can be really, really problematic sometimes for certain people, depending on who you are, but really for a lot of people actually in general. And then probably the last point that I'm really going to make in terms of the problem with the engineering community, and this one I don't really know. I mean, there are some solutions that you can work around for it, but it has everything to do with the lifestyle. And I think this one's a little bit more out there or just more straightforward. But the idea is that when you work an engineering job, most engineering jobs, you're basically sitting behind a desk all day for several hours looking at very small numbers on a screen. There are some engineering jobs, like I know I worked in construction, so for me personally, I actually was in the field, so this was not really necessarily the case for me. But the dominant most engineering jobs I found are very, very desk numbers heavy, where you're just sitting behind a screen looking at numbers, whether this is on Excel, a coding sheet, or just something like that. That's basically the idea. And obviously there's solutions, like you can get a standing desk, you can, I don't know, take breaks every once in a while. But at the end of the day, I think it's just important to notice is that the lifestyle, the inactive lifestyle where you're just not really socializing with people, you're just sitting behind a desk all day, you're just, staring at a screen, it can really impact your health. It can impact your eyes, it can impact your physical and your mental health. And even if you work a job, that's why I'm trying to cover as much ground as possible. Even if you work a job, and I know a lot of people that work engineering jobs where you are working in teams where you actually do get to socialize with people on a regular basis, the problem goes back to the social fit that I mentioned in the second point, which is about the fact that the problem is that, like, for a lot of these jobs now, is that you are now working a job where social skills are very, very important, but because of the culture and the nature of the engineering community, even if social skills are actually very important, which they are very important actually in a lot of engineering jobs because you are working with teams and you have to be able to communicate your ideas, there is just some kind of stigma in the engineering community where a lot of people just don't work on their social skills. And although that's basically the idea, is that it's an important skill to make, many people I have found in the community just totally disregard it as a necessary skill to be able to learn. Whether it's because maybe they're a little bit more shy in personality, again going back, they're a little bit more introverted. At the end of the day, this is just one of those skills that I think you just have to really be able to develop and try to leave the comfort zone. But a lot of engineers do not do that. And I think that's one of the other big problems, going back to the lifestyle. So really the idea really is that these are just some problems that I really want to talk about in this industry. Again, it has a special place in my heart because I was an engineer for a period of time. I am no longer an engineer. I left the engineering industry for about 6 years, for about 6 years now. But as someone that has been there, as someone that has left, as someone that has experienced other industries, these are just hopefully some ideas that if you are trying to become an engineer, or maybe you are an engineer and thinking about leaving an engineer, you can maybe comment whether or not you agree, you disagree, or any personal thoughts in the comment section below. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well. Remember to smash the like button if you guys hopefully enjoyed this, to share support, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.